Coming May 30th, 2026 to Nashville, Michigan. It's Ghostorama Nashville. Coming to you from the Foxview Event Center in Nashville, located at 975 Main Street. We will have spooky vendors, a car show, food vendors, activities for the little hunters in our lives. This is a look at para-unity at its best. Skeptics, believers, non-believers, debunkers, the general public. It is a deep dive into the supernatural and the paranormal. We will have 3 public speaking engagements at noon, 1 and 2. Vendor spaces are limited indoors at $35 and outdoors unlimited at $25. The show will be followed by an after-hours ghost hunt at one of Nashville's top haunted locations. The price for the after-hours ghost hunt is $30 for the first person in your team and $20 for each additional team member. Come and join us May 30th, 2026 for Ghostorama. Or always wonder what truly hides in the dark. Ghostorama is sponsored by Southern Michigan Paranormal's Frankenfest, Paranormal Pop Investigations, Jesse Joan of Arc, and the Midwest Parahistoric Society.
Welcome back to the Paranormal Papa Podcast, episode 28, coming to you from Ferocious Feline Studios in Cassopolis, Michigan. Hey kids, it's Papa. Welcome back to episode 28 of the Paranormal Papa Podcast. You know, it's another early morning here at the homestead. And I've had a lot of things going on in my mind for the last week or so. Of course, everybody's heard of the Obama interview on the podcast. Here, look at this.
Are aliens real?
They're real, but I haven't seen them, and they're not being kept in, what is it?
Area 51?
Area 51. There's no underground facility, unless there's this enormous conspiracy, and they hid it from the President of the United States.
What was the first question you wanted answered when you became president?
Where are the aliens?
Where are the aliens?
Of course, that shocked a lot of people. But what was really shocking was the president's follow-up.
Well, he gave classified information. He's not supposed to be doing that. You know?
So aliens are real?
Well, I don't know if they're real or not. I can tell you.
Something that got a lot of attention this week. Barack Obama said that aliens are real. Have you seen any evidence of non-human visitors to Earth?
Well, he gave classified information. He's not supposed to be doing that. You know?
So aliens are real?
Well, I don't know if they're real or not. I can tell you he gave classified information. He's not supposed to be doing that.
Well,
he made a big mistake. He took it out of classified information. No, I don't have an opinion on it. I never talk about it. A lot of people do. A lot of people believe it. Do you believe it, Peter?
Well, the president can declassify anything that he wants to, so
Well,
if you
maybe I'll
want to
get
make
him out
an
of trouble.
announcement.
I may get him out of trouble by declassifying.
We know illegal aliens are real.
Yeah, illegal.
Now, right after this, the next day, as a matter of fact, within a 24-hour period, the president announced that he was going to order a complete release of all information on alien life technology, UFOs, etc. Now, I mean, if we know our government, this is what that form is probably going to look like. They're all about talking the game, releasing the information to the public. In the last 5 years, we have had multiple whistleblowers come before Congress, ex-military, individuals who have contracted with the military, etc., discussing this subject. And I still don't know what to make of it. So for this episode of the podcast, I wanted to listen to interviews from 2 prior military personnel and hear what they have to say about their own experiences. Buckle your seatbelts. This gets good.
I'm looking, I've never seen a craft like that. As I got closer into the crater, I could see the cockpit of the craft. Then I could see a kidney-like opening on the side of the craft, lying halfway in, halfway out. It's what we'd call in a typical grave.
It's emotional for you, isn't it? How come?
I've been in combat, I've seen death, and our visitors, they're not cartoon characters to me. They are just like us. They have families, they have fears, they have likes, they have dislikes. And when you're doing interfacing with our visitors, then what's happening is anything and everything you feel, they feel. What they feel, you feel. When they feel fear, you feel fear. I don't care what people think about me. At one time it bothered me. But there's other people out there hurting and suffering. I don't have the right to keep quiet. I have a moral obligation to talk about what happened to me, no matter what other people think of me. And the reason I have that moral obligation is to help other people who have had other experiences to know that they are not alone, that there are many of us out there.
When you first got into the military, did you expect to be investigating down craft in ETs?
No, sir. When I first got in the military, I had to fight like heck to get in. I was medically rejected from military service. I wanted to go in and serve my country. I felt that that was one of the greatest things that a young man could do. I still feel that way. I went ahead, I got in, and my intentions was to serve God, my country, and be a credit to both my country and my family.
Initially, you did not want to get into the Army. You wanted to get into a different branch, didn't you?
I wanted to get into the Air Force. As a matter of fact, my initial 214 stipulated I had enlisted in the Air Force, which later they would use against me.
So how did they move you into the Army? How did that happen?
I went, took my oath, signed my DD Form 214, which is the enlistment contract. They went ahead, put me on a plane, flew me to Fort Gordon, Georgia. I went in there for basic training and was Army all the way up until the time that I had a couple experiences with UFOs, and all of a sudden they told me, you got a choice. Work with us, re-enlist for 3 more years, or be court-martialed.
Or court-martialed?
Yes, sir. I'd wasted all the taxpayers' money because I was supposed to be in the Air Force. And I was in the Army uniform, and I was serving in the Army. And how dare me go ahead and waste all the taxpayers' money.
How old were you at that time?
At that time, I was 19, sir.
19 years old at that time, folks. Just a young guy, almost a kid. A man, of course, in the military, but 19 years old. So when you got into this unit, and it was basically a front to hide what was really going on, what was your first experience to the craft?
My first experience as far as involving craft, and this is hard for me to tell, was we went for what was called an FTX, a field training exercise, there at Indiantown Gap, Pennsylvania. sometime during the course of the night, close to midnight, myself and a couple of other people in my unit was directed to go ahead, pack up the deuce and a half, which we had the NBC equipment on and communications equipment on. And we were going to a location where there was a crash of a aircraft of some kind. So I went ahead, packed up all my stuff. We started to go. There was, I don't know, maybe 7, 8 vehicles that was in the convoy when we were going. I was driving my deuce and a half. And as we approached, we saw these floodlights shining down on something that looked like a hill-shaped object. Once we got there, I went ahead and was waiting for them to go ahead and bring landlines to attach up to my switchboard, the SP-22, when this person that later on I'd always call the colonel came in and said, "Son, I want you to take the AP-27, which is similar to a Geiger counter. I want you to walk towards the craft, and I want you to call back the readings you're getting as you get closer." So I went ahead, I got the AP-27, started to walk toward it, and I was calling them back. And I'm looking, I've never seen a craft like that. And
it didn't look like one of our planes, did it?
Sir. It looked like the heel of a shoe, with the back of the heel into the ground at about a 45-degree angle. As I got closer into the crater, I could see the cockpit of the craft. Then I could see a kidney-like opening on the side of the craft, lying halfway in. Halfway out was what we'd call in the typical gray. And I went ahead and I immediately stated, "I need an officer up here." The guy that I've always called the colonel said, "It's okay, son. Just tell us what you're seeing." I says, "No, sir, you don't understand. I need an officer up here."
You were one of the first to see a body
Yes, sir.
in this craft. The other military people at the time had not even been that close yet.
No, sir. And which is unusual because we were the B team. We arrived after a team had already set up the floodlights. How they didn't see anything when they were setting up the floodlights, I don't understand. But I got there and I know what I saw, and that's when I started to ask for an officer. And it was very hard to call back and try to explain what I was seeing there.
Clifford, how close did you get to the ET?
This is going to be a guess, but I would say I was probably within 20, 25 feet of the ET itself, because I was standing on the berm that was built up by the crater when it impacted.
Did it look like it was dead?
I knew it was dead.
You did. Why? It's emotional for you, isn't it? How come?
I've been in combat. I've seen death. And our visitors, they're not cartoon characters to me. They are just like us. They have families, they have fears, they have likes, they have dislikes. And when you're doing interfacing with our visitors, then what's happening is anything and everything you feel, they feel. What they feel, you feel. When they feel fear, you feel fear. And in every case, I always had this anxiety, I had this fear when I was involved in one of these cases. And in the entire 22 and a half years I spent, there's only about 12 cases I was involved in. But each and every one was different. Each and every one had their personal elements of that fear.
Were the extraterrestrials over the course of your investigations different, or were they the same kind of being?
Oh, they were different, and they had a manual, which I refer to it to a medical manual. I wasn't supposed to be privy to it, I wasn't supposed to see it, but I was shown it. And that's how come I became aware that there were approximately 50, but the book stated there were 57 different species that was currently visiting the Earth. And the book was nothing more than a first aid book, how to take care of them until, I'm going to just come out and say it, until we can get aid from their people to do the proper medical procedures that they might need. And there was that correlation with their people and ours.
As you approached the being some 20 feet away for the first time, were you close enough to be able to describe what it looked like?
Oh, yes, sir. It was a typically gray. My impression was that it was about 3.5 foot tall. It was lying with its arms up like this, and it's up like this, and the head, the right side was down onto the body of the craft where it was trying to crawl out. The eyes were closed. The ears, and I'm not going to say they're pointed, but they were a little oblong, a little different than what ours was. And the mouth looked kind of distorted. And remember, they only have a slit for a mouth. But it looked like whatever happened, it was in pain. When
it was still kind of withering.
Yes, sir.
When you got there.
It hadn't been dead for all that long.
Did people come and take the craft away and this body?
When the guy that, like I said, I always called the colonel, he said, "Okay, son, come on back down." And I went on back down. He said, "Go on and get back in your deuce and a half. Stay there. We're going to connect up the field phones to your switchboard, and you'll be manning that switchboard." And of course, I had a cover over my deuce and a half, so I got back there. The only thing I had, it was in the winter, and it was cold. I had my field jacket on, and the only thing I had as far as heat back there in the deuce and a half, in the back of it, the only thing I had was like a Coleman lantern, military type, and that was providing me with the heat. But of course, I was numb. I was trying to figure out what just happened. What did I just see? And I'd already had experiences. I mean, when you're selected, that they're going to follow you throughout your life, you have one or two choices to make. You can either go ahead and say, I'm going to fight this. And I can remember asking my mom and dad, "Please take me to a doctor. The doctor will make the monsters go away." And until we met Captain Brown, who actually knew what was going on, I don't know how. Then he followed me throughout my life until he actually was supposed to be killed in the crash of a T-33 out of Lockman Air Force Base, and it made the Columbus paper. And once again, the name Captain Brown was used, but what he told my family, I have no idea. But now my family knew that he was going to be coming around, having contact with me. It was always about UFOs, and I learned a lot from him. But the whole situation is that either you make that choice, you're going to go ahead and cooperate and try to gain some understanding and knowledge from your cooperation, where the exchange is going to be mutual, or you fight and resist, at which time it's going to go ahead and it's going to destroy your whole life. It's going to drive you insane.
Well, you're not insane.
Well, thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
And you were able to battle that. Now, what did your family say about some of these things as the years moved on, Clifford?
My family went ahead and didn't say too awful much to me. They knew that something strange was going on in my life. And I had family members that actually were interested in the paranormal. And I was the one that had the major concern, because I didn't go strictly with any religious beliefs or anything like that, but I believed in God. And I thought, what if this is the devil trying to take me over? Right. And that was one of my greatest fears. And of course, the one that followed me throughout my life, when I called Corona, he went ahead and says, "You got to remember this. We're never going to tell you to do anything that's going to hurt anyone, or anything that would be wrong, or anything that would be against your moral character." And to date, I'm 68 years old. He lived up to that.
This is going to be important for you, Clifford, but I'm going to ask our live audience here for a moment a question. It is by no means a slight to you. Please understand that.
No problem at all, sir.
Ladies and gentlemen, you've just heard a story, and we're going to get into more with Clifford Stone. When he was 19 years old, witnessing a downed craft when he was with the Army and a dead extraterrestrial. You've seen the emotion with just telling me that one facet of his story. This is important for him. By a yay or nay, how many of you in this audience right now do not believe what you just heard? And I want you to be very, very honest with us. Just yell it out, yes or no?
Thank you.
A nay. How many of you believe the story? Overwhelming. And everybody's entitled to their feelings,
yes, sir.
Their decisions and everything. And I can understand from the people who do not believe the story, I can understand that.
I can understand that too, sir.
It's a wild story. But other than writing a great book called UFOs Are Real,
Thank you, sir.
you haven't prospered off this.
No, sir.
You're not making a lot of money at this conference. We all love Paula Harris, but she's not paying you a lot of money for this. So why do you do this?
If I had my brothers, I would keep my mouth shut and live a normal life, because it affects your family life. But you know, you can't think of yourself. You got to go ahead and think of other people out there who have had experiences, because no one's a believer till they have an experience, and they can't help but believe. And they need to know they're not alone. They need to know they're not crazy. They need to know there are other people out there just like them that's had experiences. And maybe your experience hasn't been the same as theirs, their experiences haven't been the same as yours, but unless you come out and you are willing to tell what happened to you, then others will not say anything. Case in point, when I wrote this last book, I had one call, and that one guy that called had been with me on one of the recoveries. And he only wanted to call to let me know that he appreciated the fact that I wrote the book. The reason he wanted me to know that, unbeknownst to me, his family was right there, and we talked. And he finally convinced me that, yes, he had been with me on a crash. I'll tell you right where the crash was, in Georgia. And I heard this woman in the background when we went ahead, and he said, when I was with you, and the craft started to kind of rumble and tremble, you know. Do you know what side I was on? I'm thinking, okay, you know, I've never told that story. This guy may know what he's talking about. And I said, if you're who I think I am, sir, you're on my right side. He says, yes. And he said, do you remember what you said when I asked you what happens next? And I'm going to clean it up. I'm going to make it G. I'm not going to say what we would say in the military. But I said,
you can't say that.
I said,
we're going to go to a commercial. Oh, sorry, I lied.
I said, I haven't the foggiest idea. And when I started to say it, he said it with me, which was confirmation. He had to have been there. I heard a woman in the background go ahead, oh my God, it's true. Then I heard some others sighing.
Can't say that.
He had his grandchildren, his children, and his wife, who always told him not to talk about it because people think he was crazy. And you know what? I'm going to say it right now, folks. I don't care what people think about me. At one time it bothered me. But you know, there's other people out there hurting and suffering, and I don't have the right to keep quiet. I have a moral obligation to talk about what happened to me, no matter what other people think of me. And the reason I have that moral obligation is to help other people who have had other experiences to know that they are not alone, that there are many of us out there, literally tens of thousands of us that have had experience, and let them know that what happened to them wasn't a sign of craziness. It wasn't delusional. It was something that was a reality, and they need to feel good about the experience they had.
Good for you. How about that? That's an American for you. Over the course of your career, has anybody in government tried to shut you up?
Oh, yes, sir. Back just before I got out of the service, they actually they gave me a lawful order not to talk about it. Well, at that time, I already made it clear we were hurting people. And that was wrong. We did not have that right. So I started to talk out about it. By talking out about it, one guy right there in New Mexico, his involvement in what he had experiences with led to his death. And that bothered me. So I said, no, we're going to talk out. So I started writing to members of Congress at that time. I went ahead and was talking to the media. I was given a lawful order. I would not go ahead and correspond with any branches of the U.S. government, talk to the media, or anything else. I'd keep my mouth shut. I considered that an unlawful order and continued to do it. At which time they went ahead and gave me a a bad EER, relieved me of all my duties, and decided that I was not following lawful orders. They were going to court-martial me in accordance with Article 92 of the Uniform Code of Military Justice. And I said, do what you must, because I'm going to do what I must. Ultimately, in the end, the 3 officers that was really trying to push this toward me, they were relieved of duty. Then they wanted me to go ahead and go overseas. I'd already put in my retirement papers because I was going to fight this. I wasn't leaving. The Pentagon ordered my retirement papers pulled. They pulled my retirement papers and sent me to Germany. When I got to Germany, I went ahead and felt good about that because I did not want to go ahead and just leave the Army because they wanted me to leave. I wanted to be my choice.
You wanted your terms.
Yes, sir.
Did you, let me just ask because I'm curious, did you get your military retirement? I mean, you got your 20 years in. So they didn't take that away from you? They didn't.
As a matter of fact, during the time, the 18 months that I was fighting, the living hell I was going through with all the court-martial charges and things holding over me, when I left that unit, I was given one of the highest medals you can get for peacetime service, known as the Meritorious Service Medal.
That is a great award and a great honor.
Thank you,
Fantastic.
Suddenly something came up behind George and attacked him. Virginia witnessed the attack on her husband. George yelled for Virginia to drive away. Virginia saw her husband fighting with something that did not resemble a human. They issued us some gas masks, which we put on, and I walked over and looked at it. It looked like a praying mantis. To me, it looked like a huge praying mantis, a 7-foot-tall praying mantis with a cape, weird-looking face. Virginia had many questions that were not answered. On August 13th, 2 special agents from the Air Force Office of Special Investigations visited the family. I was one of them. I worked in the Special Projects Branch of the Air Force Office of Special Investigations, codenamed PJ. PJ developed and implemented security policies and procedures for compartmented special access programs. I was a counterintelligence officer at Area 51 during a temporary duty assignment. I had access to highly classified reverse engineering programs at both Groom Lake and Tonopah. Many years ago, in the 1890s up through the 1900s, mines were developed around Nevada. During the mining operations back in those days, miners saw strange lights and balls of lights that were being emitted from the mines. Charles Burnock was a supervisor of a mine in western Nevada. He wrote about seeing balls of light and also flying equipment coming out of some mines. Now, this is in the early 1900s, and UFOs wasn't even a terminology back in those days. Balls of light. In fact, in the early 1900s, we didn't have anything flying other than hot air balloons, no aircrafts. Wright brothers hadn't perfected flight Kitty Hawk yet. So what is that? What did he see? What was that he wrote about in a old mining magazine? Harold Lines was another miner, supervisor, that worked in a mine that was within the Nellis Test and Training Range. He saw some strange things. He talked about it. He talked about it to a number of different people. He even discussed it with a reporter from a San Francisco newspaper that was doing a story in that area about the old 49ers, a group of settlers that were trying to find the Continental Divide. And Harold Lines talked about seeing these strange lights, huge lights, coming out of mines. I'm going to talk about an incident that happened in August of 1985. This family was from North Las Vegas. They decided to camp in a remote area of Nevada. George, the father, read an article about an old mining town in Nevada. George's family consisted of Virginia, his wife, and 2 children, Denise, age 7, and Billy, age 13. The family owned a 1977 Ford station wagon, which was used on this trip. The family left their home in North Las Vegas and drove to Alamo where George got gas and Virginia picked up a few grocery items. The family arrived at Silver Bowl approximately 3 p.m. in the afternoon. The family set up the tents and prepared for an enjoyable camping adventure. The family found Silver Bowl to be remote, with various old buildings and mine shafts in the area. No other people were at the site. During a tour of the site, the family found a gate leading into Nellis Air Force Base. There was also a sign prominently displayed that stated use of deadly force authorized. That sign went with a warning that unauthorized personnel were not allowed on the base. The family had a fun-filled evening, cooking on a grill, roasting marshmallows, and making s'mores. The family entered their tent and fell asleep at 10 p.m. George was awoken a short time later, hearing voices outside the tent. George got up and walked outside. George observed a military truck parked next to their tent. Two men wearing military uniforms told George to pack up their belongings and leave the area immediately. George was told that an escaped convict was loose in the area. George woke his family and told them, pack up, we have to leave. The military was outside and just warned them that an escaped convict was on the loose. Virginia was concerned as to the reason for them leaving, but George convinced her, we don't have a choice. The military told us to leave, and we have to leave. Now, Virginia, later, when she was interviewed, thought that they weren't on a military base. They were close to it, a few hundred yards from the Air Force Base, but they weren't on the base. They were on BLM property, Bureau of Land Management. Why would they have to leave? George heard a radio voice tell the military men to respond to a Gate 4 ASAP. George had been in the military and knew what ASAP meant. The military men got into their truck and left. The family packed up in about 25 minutes. Once their vehicle was packed, George checked the area to make sure nothing was left behind. George heard a strange screaming voice, but could not determine what it was or the location of it. George walked around the vehicle and opened the driver's door. Suddenly, something came up behind George and attacked him. Virginia witnessed the attack on her husband. George yelled for Virginia to drive away. Virginia saw her husband fighting with something that did not resemble a human. Virginia slid into the driver's seat and drove away. Billy started screaming that something was chasing them. A monster, he said. Mommy, there's a monster behind us. Virginia drove east to Reveille Mill Road, south to Cedar Pipeline Road, and then on to Nevada 375, which is now called Alien Highway, Extraterrestrial Alien Highway. Virginia drove to Alamo and found the Lincoln County Sheriff's Office. Remember, this is in the morning, but no one was there. Virginia found a phone and telephoned the sheriff's dispatch. Virginia explained what had happened and wanted help in finding her husband. A Lincoln County deputy arrived, and Virginia explained to him what had happened. So this Lincoln County Sheriff's deputy drove north to Warm Springs, which was a junction of Nevada Highway 6 and 375. At Warm Springs, two Nye County Sheriff's deputies were waiting. They took a report from Virginia and said they would respond to Silver Bow. The Nye County deputies told Virginia to wait there. About 5 hours later, the Lincoln County deputy told Virginia to drive to Tonopah and wait at the sheriff's department for someone to let them in. Now, from that point, or for that location where she was, Warm Springs, to Tonopah, the city of Tonopah, which was west of Warm Springs, on Route 6, was about 70 miles. At noon, August 12th, a Nye County sergeant and a county chaplain arrived at the sheriff's office. The chaplain told Virginia that her husband was dead. However, the body was taken by the U.S. military for examination. Once an examination was complete, the body would be returned to the family. Virginia and her family obviously got the bad news that her husband was dead, She didn't know how he died, didn't know who killed him, but knew it was tragedy. Virginia had many questions that were not answered. Virginia and her family decided to return home and wait for the authorities to contact them. On August 13th, 2 special agents from the Air Force Office of Special Investigations visited the family. I was one of them. The agents advised Virginia that George was killed by an escaped convict from the base. The convict was caught and killed by military police. George's body would be returned to a funeral home in North Las Vegas on August 19th. The agents expressed remorse for her loss, but could not answer any further questions at this time. I was there at the house with Virginia. Her kids were in the area where we were talking to Virginia. She was despondent, crying, talking about how long they'd been married, her and George, her family, the history of what her plans were in the future. I was heartbroken. But we told her what we knew at the time. Now it was criticized after this incident was first told some years ago of why I lied to her. Well, I didn't lie to her. I wasn't at the scene of Silverbow. I hadn't investigated what had happened at this point. I knew something was involved the Special Access Program. I didn't know exactly what, myself or the other agent, who was agent, his last name was Harrison. So we told her what we knew, and I tried to answer all her questions, but she had a lot of questions I just couldn't answer. On August 19th, the U.S. Air Force mortuary vehicle brought George's body to a funeral home, but the mortician told her George's body was in pieces and she should not view it. She immediately became despondent again, upset. Why can't I look at my husband's body? The mortician said, you don't want to see your husband that way. Virginia told the mortician that she wanted an autopsy performed. The mortician handed Virginia a form which stated that an autopsy was performed at Tonopah Field Hospital, Tonopah Test Range, Nevada. According to the form, George's body was found 6 miles inside the base perimeter. Virginia knew that wasn't right. Virginia had so many questions that must be answered. George was buried on August 21st, 1985. Virginia contacted the Nye County Sheriff's Department and wanted a copy of the report. The Nye County Sheriff's Department advised Virginia that they didn't conduct an investigation and referred Virginia to the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Now, you can just imagine the situation Virginia's in. She saw what happened to her husband. She witnessed it. At least from the rearview mirror, something that attacked her husband. And this was outside the base perimeter. Silverbow wasn't inside. Over the next 6 months, Virginia tried in vain to obtain answers to her questions about her husband's death. The FBI would refer Virginia to the OSI. OSI would not return her calls. Finally, OSI called Virginia and invited her to Nellis Air Force Base. On October 5th, 1985, Virginia drove to Nellis and met with OSI agents. Virginia was told that an escaped convict from Groom Lake Air Force Base had killed her husband inside the test range. The convict was later killed by military police. Virginia told the agents a different story as to what she witnessed. But the agents said that her information wasn't accurate. I wasn't one of those agents at the Nellis Air Force Base office. I wasn't one of them. During this time, I was investigating the incident that happened, which we're going to talk about here in a few minutes. The agent at the OSI office gave Virginia the phone number of the base legal office where Virginia could make a claim against the Air Force. The rest is information I'm going to talk about regarding what Virginia did and what happened to Virginia is sensitive. I'm not going to give their last names. They want to, of course, Virginia has passed away by now. Billy, her son, is still alive, and we're going to talk about Billy in a few minutes. But the Air Force eventually settled with Virginia for some money. Virginia signed a non-disclosure agreement. Virginia never had her questions answered. Virginia passed away from natural causes in 2005. Billy continued the quest for answers. And this is an ironic, unbelievable story that I'm going to tell you right now about Billy. Billy joined the United States Air Force in 1992 and became a security policeman, assigned to where? Nellis Air Force Base. Billy was reassigned to Groom Lake in 1995. Billy's supervisor was a Master Sergeant Grow. Master Sergeant Grow had been assigned to Groom Lake for over 12 years. One night on a late shift, Billy asked Master Sergeant Grow about the incident at Silverbow. Without telling Master Sergeant Grow that his father was the one that was killed there, Master Sergeant Grow told Billy about the incident. He related that the incident was classified but involved an escaped visitor. After a puzzled look on Billy's face, Master Sergeant Grow explained that the U.S. government had visitors from other planets in captivity near Papoose Lake Complex. One of those visitors escaped and killed a man. Billy asked about the visitor, and Master Sergeant Grow said that after the murder, the visitor was killed. Billy then told Master Sergeant Grow that the man that was killed at Silverbow was his father. Now you just imagine what Master Sergeant Grow felt like hearing that information from Billy. Here, this horrible incident happened many years ago. Master Sergeant Grow was involved in the search for this visitor. And now, in 1995, Master Sergeant Grow meets the son of the civilian that was killed. Master Sergeant Grow was heartbroken and said how sorry he was for Billy's loss. Billy did visit the area near Papoose Lake called S2 Annex. However, Billy never learned any more about the incident. Billy retired from the Air Force in 2012 and lives in Ohio. On that particular evening, I was awoke by the Operations Command Post at Groom Lake and informed that an incident had happened and that OSI was requested at the scene. So I got up and got into my clothes, and we always utilize a two-man concept, meaning I went next door to my partner's room and knocked on a door and told him to get up, let's go, we gotta go out. We weren't told what it was. And when we got to the security police building on base, we were told that a visitor had escaped. We knew what the visitors were, although I had never seen one, and I didn't have access to S2 Annex. And they advised us that they were searching for this visitor. And about an hour and a half later, by this time we were at the OSI office, which is building 435 at Groom Lake, sitting around drinking coffee, waiting for command post to notify us to respond to where we were supposed to respond to. And we were then advised the situation had taken place near Silverbow and that there was somebody dead. So we responded to this area. And what had happened is part of what the Air Force told Virginia was truth. the visitor attacked her husband at Silver Bowl, but drug his body into the Nellis Test and Training Range. And the body was found a few miles inside. Now, the creature didn't eat George, but he killed him. At that area, the security police had a confrontation with the visitor. Now, there were procedures to try to capture this. They had netting and other devices that they could capture escaped visitor. But because of the fact that it had just killed a human, the security police supervisor at the scene, a lieutenant, ordered his men to shoot and kill the visitor, and they did, and the visitor was killed. It was our job to respond and conduct a crime scene investigation and a report. When I got there, this visitor was lying on the ground with a tarp over it. This particular species, when it decayed, it emitted a toxic fumes. And so we had to stay some distance away. But I was able to look at it from a distance and see it. They issued us some gas masks, which we put on, and I walked over and looked at it. It looked like a praying mantis. To me, it looked like a huge praying mantis, a 7-foot tall praying mantis with a cape, weird-looking face, and protrusion as for hands. Now, I'd never seen one before, and I was never briefed into what the species were. I had a lot of questions for the officer who was responsible for maintaining the creature containment, or the visitor containment area, but he was very hesitant about telling me everything. He said it's dead, it was a visitor, it was in captivity, and that's about all I needed to know. I noticed that there were shell casings, 5.56 shell casings around the area, and that's the type of ammunition an M16 rifle would carry. The spent rounds were on the ground, and we had to photograph them and marked where each round was, comparison to where the security policemen were shooting, and so forth and so on. We did all that. It took us hours to do that. We took photographs. And then we went to Silver Bowl, which was, again, outside the test and training range. There was a Nye County Sheriff's deputy there, and there was a Nevada Game and Fish officer there. There was blood and debris around where this visitor attacked George. And we did a crime scene there, photographing, marking, doing a crime scene sketch, and so forth and so on. And then we took all this information, went back and did a detailed report. I mean, a detailed report of what we did and what we, the fact that and the incident occurred. Not sure exactly how this was going to be received by the command people. We had to brief the base commander. And then finally, this investigation lasted several months. Over a period of several months, I think probably in the early part of December of 1985, the report was finalized after we got autopsy results back and other things back. We sent the case to our headquarters in our PJ Bureau, and that's where the case is today. Now, I know the case number, and I've tried to get the case a number of times. The first time I tried to get it, I got 7 pages of nothing but redacted material. Not one word was released. That was only 7 pages. And that's what we call a summary of incident. I knew what it was a summary of the incident. But it was worthless. There was nothing there. Not even the case number. The second time, I tried a different way of asking for you. through OSI. This time I got back 34 pages. Now, some of those 34 pages were not redacted. But the only thing contained in those 34 pages that were not redacted were just a basic story line about Nellis Test and Training Range, Silver Bowl, Nye County Sheriff's, Lincoln County Sheriff's Cooperation, interviewing a game and fish officer. That's it. Nothing other meat. Jump ahead to 2019. Some other people within our group submitted a FOIA request. Now this is 2019. I tried in 1993. I tried in 2004. Now this is 2019, just a couple years ago. Air Force sends me back a letter saying the incident, this report is properly classified and not releasable. And that's an exemption of a FOIA. I mean, if it's still classified, you're not going to get anything. So that's what I got back. I got back a letter saying it's properly classified. Now, stop thinking about that. I classified it. It was top secret, code word. They sent me during my first FOIA request in the 90-something, which just meant nothing. The second one was more pages, but again, they didn't give me all of it because the original report was some 100, probably 100 and some pages. I don't remember exact number of pages, but it was at least 100. And now, during this era of disclosure, you ask for this report, and what do they tell you? It's classified, properly classified, and not releasable. Period. That's it. Well, I called the FOIA monitor at OSI. It was a female. I talked to her. I told her about my request. She said, yes, I have it right here. I said, and I explained to her, why did they send me parts of it in 1990s and parts of it in 2005, and then now they're telling me it's classified. She said, I don't know. All I am is a FOIA monitor. I said, can I speak to somebody within the Office of Primary Responsibility, OPR? She said, oh, I don't know. I can pass your message along. I don't know that they'll talk to you. So I said, well, try it. So I didn't think I'd hear anything back. January of 2020, just before my wife and I were going on vacation, I get a phone call. I look on the caller ID, and who was it? Air Force Office of Special Investigations. What's the branch? Special Projects. I said, wow. I answered the phone. I said, yeah, hello, Richard Doty here. He said, Richard. I said, yes. He said, you probably don't remember me, but I was an OSI agent years ago, and I got out of the OSI as a military man and went back in as a civilian, and now I work in Special Projects. Now, I do remember the guy. Vaguely. I mean, I never worked with him, but I remember the name. He said, I understand you want a copy of your report. I said, yeah, I want a copy of this report, and I gave him the file number. He said, that's your report. I said, I know it's my report, but I want to get it so I can talk about it. He said, what do you want to talk about? I said, I want to relate this incident. He said, we can't release it to you. I said, how can you justify it still being classified all these years? He said, I'm not at liberty to discuss that with you on the phone. But you, of all people, you worked in this bureau, you, of all people, would know why it has to be classified. I said, no, I don't. After all these years, some of this can be released. Maybe not the identification of the visitor or talking about George or the family or what happened, But the mere fact that we had something there and an incident did happen should be released. He said, well, good luck with that. We're not going to release it. It's still classified. And you know that if something is properly classified, it's exempt from disclosure under FOIA. I said, I understand that. I'm fully aware of that. But I want just something that can tell me that the incident happened. I said, what if I was to go out and talk about this incident? What are you going to do to me? He said, I don't think they'll do anything to you. So I left it at that. And now I'm out here talking about it. I'm not going to disclose everything. There's a lot more to this. I mean, I could sit here for 3.5 hours in detail some of the things we found in the investigation and some of the things that Billy and his sister and his mother that involved them, but I'm not going to do that. All I'm going to say is what happened, incident at Silver Bow. I suggest you do as much research as you can about Silver Bow and see what you can find out.
Welcome back to the studio. You know, it's like I was saying in the beginning, even with the transparency that's been going on with Congress for the last 5 or 6 years, where all of these individuals, these whistleblowers, have been coming forward and talking about Air Force interaction with UAPs, UFOs, with non-biologicals being kept in secret locations around the country, and even going as far as there being an agreement between these different races and the world where we allow them to operate, conduct their experimentation, etc., in secret locations around the country and around the world. What is the truth? I mean, President Obama drops this bomb, and then just not a couple hours later, President Trump, goes on his little rant about him, releasing top secret information. He shouldn't have done that. He's in trouble. That right there tells me that there's something that we're not being told. Over the last decade, sightings of UAPs and UFOs have gone up drastically around the world, not just here in America, not just in the United States, but Central America, South America, France, England, Scotland, Russia, the Orient, not to mention the footage that our U.S. military, our Navy, and our Air Force have managed to capture out in the open water. What do you think? Do you believe that we have a contract, an agreement with these races, letting them conduct their experimentation on citizens of the earth? Do you believe we have secret bases under the ocean or in caverns and caves and secret facilities in the mountains or in the desert? Being here in Michigan, we not only have the legend of the Michigan Triangle, but we have got countless accounts by sailors, by military. It was probably only about 15, 20 years ago that one of our local Strategic Air Command bases located here in the Great Lakes region released information Well, an individual who wasn't thinking straight released information that an unidentified object flew over one of their bases and within seconds shut down all power to the missile silos, and then just a few minutes later powered them back up. Is it true? Who knows? But if it is, but that's all we got for episode 28 of the Paranormal Papa Podcast, coming to you live from Ferocious Feline Studios in Cassopolis, Michigan. Until next time, take care of yourselves, take care of each other. God bless you, God love you, we do. The truth is out there.